Welcome to Independence Nation on the Light of Life Network. We are still following the developments that occur in Ferguson, Missouri. I just want to begin by saying that last week we reported that the hacktivist group Anonymous reported that an officer, Wilburn, was the one who shot the 18-year-old unarmed Michael Brown, but it was in fact Darren Wilson that shot Michael Brown. And I have to say that they came out with militarization to begin with. It didn't work, and they went to peaceful efforts by bringing in Officer-in-Chief Ron Johnson, and now they are back to the militarization. And I have to say, this is right back to phase one, where it didn't work, and so we're right back at the beginning. So the article reads here: militarized U.S. police face off with Ferguson protesters. The Missouri Governor Jay Nixon has lifted the curfew in Ferguson, Missouri, following the deployment of the U.S. National Guard. Now, it says here, "We will not use a curfew tonight," Nixon wrote in a statement issued on Monday afternoon, acknowledging reports of violence during recent protests in Ferguson and adding, "We must defend Ferguson from these violent interlopers so that the peaceful protests can operate in peace and the search for answers and justice can continue." Now, I don't understand how they can hope for going back to the militarization of the police, going back to war vehicles, sniper rifles with infrared dots on peaceful protesters, and that initiate peace this time when it didn't work the first time. So, of course, among those people are what would be called provocateurs. There are provocateurs among the crowd, those who wish to get things amped up and to stifle peace. And among those who I believe are there as provocateurs and wish to stifle peace are the new Black Panther movement. The new Black Panther movement, I must stress. So, and I know what they do, that they'll get in there, they'll get everyone hyped up, they'll get the situation to the point of everyone ready to kill each other, and then they'll back out, and they'll be missing from the activity and from the violence. So that's what it's come to, reverting back to the militarization of police and hoping that will bring peace. And as we know, that doesn't bring peace. It just brings more violence. Now, I must say here that General Ban Ki-moon weighed in on the situation. As things are developing in this country, you see that there is more UN involvement in this country than ever before. So it says here, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called on U.S. authorities on Monday to ensure the protection of the rights of protesters in Ferguson, Missouri, where there have been demonstrations and rioting over the fatal police shooting of the unarmed black teen. The Secretary General calls on the authorities to ensure that the rights to peaceful assembly, or rights to peaceful assembly, and freedom of expression are protected. He calls on all to exercise restraint, for law enforcement officials to abide by U.S. and international standards in dealing with demonstrators. Unfortunately, as I said, it's going to come to this in the future, where the land of the free will be no longer as free as it used to be, and we'll have to look to the United Nations for relief with our own country, unfortunately. And so we're becoming like any other country who has had problems with its own government and problems with fighting among the people and the government turning against the society. And so, as I said, we're right back to stage one: militarization of police. More people get hurt. More sniper rifles are drawn down on people, and maybe we need the militia. Once again, the militia took an involvement in the riots or a situation that happened with the Bundy rancher, and maybe we need the militia for this. Maybe that's what can calm everything down. Maybe we'll have to look forward to the militia in this country to keep peace, because it obviously did for the rancher. Of course, we covered that story a while back. So I want to get into here what Michael Brown's mother said. It says here in the article, "What else do we need to give them to arrest the killer of my child?" Once again, that's Brown's mother speaking of concerning the private autopsy. But before we get to the private autopsy, I want to go to the eyewitness account of Dorian Johnson, Michael Brown's friend, what took place that day and the activity that occurred with the police.
It was around 2 o'clock. We were walking down the street, an empty street. We were just walking down, minding our own business. We both headed home.
And the officer watching us, and he pulled up beside of us. He didn't say freeze, halt, or nothing like we were committing a crime. He said the F on sidewalk. I told the officer we were not but a minute away from the destination. He's at an angle where we're so close to his door and him that when he tries to thrust the door open aggressively, it doesn't come an inch out before it strikes both of us. His arm extended out the window, grabbed my friend around the neck. He didn't say step back or anything like that. He started to pull my friend to the window. So the officer's trying to pull him in. He's pulling away from the officer. He never once attempted to grab for this officer's weapon. He's still holding my friend with one arm, and now with the other hand, he's pointing his weapon. The second time he says, "I'll shoot," it wasn't even a second later before the gun just went off, and the officer let go. And that's how we were able to run at the same time. The first car I see, I duck behind for cover because I fear for my life. I'm scared. I don't know what's going on. I don't understand why this officer is shooting his weapon at us. And I'm watching the officer. He's pursuing my friend now. Then he fired another shot. It struck my friend in the back. Then my friend stopped running. His hands immediately went in the air and he turned around towards the officer face to face. He started to tell the officer that he was unarmed and that you should stop shooting me before he can get his second sentence out. The officer fired 7 more shots into his head and chest, and he fell dramatically in the fatal position. I did not hear once he yelled freeze, stop, or halt. It was just horrible to watch. It hurt him a lot. I see it in his eyes. It hurt him a lot. It was definitely like being shot like an animal. It was almost.
And so there was the eyewitness account, Dorian Johnson speaking. As you heard there, he said that Michael Johnson was running away from the officer. He turned with his hands in the air, and with his hands in the air in a surrender position, the officer shot him several times. So getting back to the private autopsy that Brown's mother had done, let's read here the article. It says, "The family of Michael Brown, the unarmed 18-year-old who was shot and killed by a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri last Saturday, held a press conference Monday morning to discuss the preliminary autopsy and the number of bullets fired at their son. The Brown family wanted to have this autopsy performed on their behalf because they did not know whether the federal officials were going to conduct their own independent autopsy, and they did not want them to be left having to rely on an autopsy done by the St. Louis law enforcement agencies, because they would have spoke to the public in their favor. And so having this autopsy, what did it show? It shows here, and I'm just going to read, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to read a couple excerpts of what it shows. It shows here that the unarmed teenager was shot at least 6 times, including twice in the head. Now, and also while 4 shots hit him in the right arm. So we got 4 shots in the right arm, 2 shots in the head, at least 6 shots, and that doesn't count for any shots that grazed him or perhaps missed him altogether. Now it says here the number of shots fired could have been answered on day 1 if you really wanted to have transparency as the objective. But of course, he's referring to Baden's initial conclusions. But they did not, Ferguson Police Department did not come out and let everyone know from day 1 how many shots were fired. The report also agrees with witness accounts that Brown's hands were up in the air when he died. Now this shows here, because he was 6'4", and a lot bigger than the officer who shot him, that he got shot in the top of the head, that he had to have been in that position with his head down in the surrender position. Now, there were 2 shots that showed the direction of the bullet was back to front, including the kill shot, co-counsel Darrell Parks said. These showed that Brown was trying to surrender to the police and had his head in a downward position because, once again, he was 6'4" and was shot at the top of his head. The Ferguson police officer who shot Brown was identified by the department on Friday, once again, as Darren Wilson. It says he was a 6-year veteran of the force, which actually I believe he's only a 4-year veteran. And Wilson, like 49 other members of the city's 53-member police force, was white. And it's hard to say if that has anything to do with the situation, but if there has been targeting by the police in the past, and I hate to say that this could very well be a part of the situation by Brown being black and this Darren Wilson being white. Now it also goes on to say here, there is no gunshot residue on the skin, meaning that the gun muzzle was at least 1 foot away, at least 1 foot. They will not be able to calculate how far away the officer was until they are able to look at Brown's clothes, Baden said. Now, so once again, we have an issue with how far apart was the officer who shot at Brown from Brown at the time of his surrender. Now we've had a witness step forward on behalf of the officer, saying that Michael Brown was charging him, and they used the term bum rushing him. But once again, we have to go with the evidence. And if he shot Brown at 2 to 3 feet in front of him, there should have been some type of gunshot residue, at least on his clothing, and I'm sure that will be investigated. As you know, the Department of Justice and Eric Holder is being dispatched on the scene to further investigate the situation, and perhaps he may already be on the scene by now. Now, there were no signs of a struggle, it says, according to Baden, but the family has also asked for the medical records of the officer to confirm that conclusion. There were abrasions on Brown's face, which the forensic pathologist believes occurred when the teenager fell to the ground after being shot in the head. Yes, once again, he was shot in the head, in the face, twice. All of the gunshot wounds were survivable, except for the one through the top of his head, which entered into his brain. So, once again, we have the situation, and now we have the evidence coming out that there was no gunshot residue on his skin. There will be further investigation to find out if there were gunshot residue on his clothing, to see whether Is this a collaboration to the eyewitness accounts of Dorian Johnson and of others who said that Brown was far away, and some say 30 to 35 feet away from Darren Wilson when he let the shots ring out? Now, to give you an idea that we're not trying to just target and go after the police, but in the recent past, the police have done horrendous things and seem to not care at all. And this speaks to their mentality. Speaks to what's going on with police here in our day and time. Now, I want to read this to you. It says here, county officials refused to pay medical bills for toddler burned by SWAT grenade. Officials in Georgia's Habersham County are refusing to pay for the mounting medical expenses of a toddler seriously injured by a flash grenade after a failed SWAT team raid earlier this year. Now, it says here that the baby was just 19 months old when a Habersham SWAT team initiated a no-knock warrant at his family's home at around 3 a.m. on May the 28th. The baby was asleep in his crib at the time, surrounded by his family and 3 sisters. The toddler was severely injured when SWAT team officers broke through the house's door and threw a flashbang grenade that ultimately landed in the baby's crib. But then again, police, they're just doing their job, right? And as supporters of Darren Wilson said, Michael Brown got what he deserved. So I guess the baby got what he deserved. Turns out in this story that they got the house and the guy that they wanted wasn't there. So they did all this, threw a flash grenade on in the baby's crib on the baby. Let me read here. It says, when the stun grenade went off, it caused severe burns on the child and opened a gash in his chest. As a result, the baby lost the ability to breathe on his own and was left in a medical-induced coma for days after the incident. His extensive recovery necessitated stays in 2 hospitals before he finally went home in July. So thank God this baby recovered, but this is ridiculous. Now the Habersham County officials are sticking by their decision to ignore the family's plight. The family's attorney told WSB-TV. Habersham County's attorney responded with a statement saying that the Board of County Commissioners will not pay given it is supposedly illegal to do so. So no compensation for the baby. Just like Michael Brown, the baby got what he deserved. And this is, once again, an idea of how the police are acting in this day and time, and that the communities, the society are being bullied by police brutality on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, as an update, there's been another person shot in Ferguson, and saying that the person had a knife, and that once again they let the rounds fly. So hey, did they deserve it? Police just doing their job, right? Darren Wilson just doing his job. Michael Brown deserved it. The baby deserved it. Maybe you and I are next. I'm Keith Pitts for Independence Nation. I'll see you next time.